Absolutely.
Every little bit.
Yeah.
That's very well said.
Thank you. Regina, there's this girl back here.
Is that okay with you?
I'd really like to hear from this girl in the back, please. Yeah.
Because I seem like a radical.
Kind of, yeah. Honestly, yes.
Okay, sorry to disappoint.
There's a bag of hat under there.
You want to make a brief defense of the third-party vote?
Say it again.
A brief defense of the third-party vote?
Sure.
Okay, in the master, just the cameras. But,
Okay.
okay, so you said that your vote was wasted when you did a third party at some point. I would argue that the best way to waste your vote is to vote for the prevailing candidate in a non-swing state. You want to, when you vote third party, you are telling the establishment that you're willing to show up and vote, but that neither group has earned your vote. And every time you vote for third party, you are building the viability of third parties in general, and that will help us in the long term potentially get out of the stranglehold that is the two-party system. And there is a caveat to that when there's a very close election, because some of the states allocate their electoral college votes based on the popular vote. But aside from that, vote third party.
Thank you.
No.
Oh. You want to what?
I see the point of that. If there were a viable third party that could win, I might join. But I think for me personally, I feel like it feels like there's so much on the line, and being somebody who had to live under the worst circumstances of a blue state and move to a red state to feel that individual liberty, for me, sometimes when people say there's no difference between the parties, I'm like, yes there is. Yes there is. The Republican Party sucks. It is the second worst of the two parties, but I feel like the best way to introduce independence is through the two-party system, which I think we're seeing with Tulsi Gabbard and RFK, and I feel like we're sort of taking over the Republican Party to become an independent party, I think.
So let's do two more questions. We'll hear, because I know you wanted to ask one, and there's a gentleman over here. So we'll do these two, and then it's getting a little late. So.
I wanted to do a couple questions. Is that okay, or should I just?
Oh, for God's sake. It's always the guy at the end.
Yeah. My name's Kevin. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm a Catholic. And so I haven't been involved that much in politics in the past, but I was sort of looking at this race a bit, and I come from a union family, and when the Teamsters president endorsed Trump, I thought that was really interesting, because it's like, oh well, there's a lot of like union involvement in this election, but I was looking around at like history sources and various things, and it seems like, because when my like ancestors came here, when my immigrant family came here, like Catholics were demonized when they came to America, and different like racial minorities have been demonized when they've immigrated to America, where they've been like a minority in America. And it seems like there's a pretty good precedent for immigrants and racial minorities being used as a tool against working class people to try to divide them, when the people who control the wages at the end of the day aren't the immigrants, it's the elite, right? And so when I look at Trump, like I think he has a lot of interesting policies, a lot of good policies for immigrants, not for immigrants, for workers, but I fear that he is using this sort of same already used like rhetoric that ultimately is compelled by people who are completely out of touch with American people. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Were you here earlier when we were kind of touching on this, or?
I'm not sure if I was.
Okay. I mean, economically, an influx of illegal immigration does impact the people who are working the lowest paid jobs. I mean, that does happen.
Well, but the billionaires get so much money.
You've got to stop talking about anti-immigrant rhetoric. It's illegal migrants.
Immigrant, yeah.
Okay.
No, it's really important.
Well, yeah, but the people who are paying them are making like massive stock dividends, and like I don't understand how I should say, oh, this person from another country is trying to like hurt me or trying to hurt my friends, when we're getting paid minimum wage because of some guy who's sitting in like a luxury apartment in New York, right?
Well, you're assuming, first of all, that, I mean, aren't we then assuming that everything we're talking about is like a big box store with a CEO making millions, as opposed to,
I mean, they're the biggest employers.
Mom and pop shops. I mean, it's
That's a
kind
fair
of
point, yeah.
utopian idea to think that, oh, you can obviously afford to pay more than $15 an hour, so why aren't you? And I think that when people do come to this country and they're fugitives and they're hiding and they're willing to work for less, for cash, and they're willing to work overtime, and they don't know what their rights are, I think that does have an impact on workers. I think that has an impact on the economy. How could it possibly not? This has been shown time and again.
I've seen mixed stuff, but I'll move on to the second question. It's for Brandon, right?
Yes.
So you were talking a lot about the January 6th stuff and about like this fight and not letting like sort of the government like persecute conservatives, can persecute people who support Trump. But I was looking around online because I was curious, and I looked at some court files, and there's like a quote from the FBI saying that you were like remarkably complicit with their investigations, and there's like a list of people that you gave over to the FBI. I don't understand how like an organization like Walkaway should be associating with you when you are giving up your supposed like.
Who did he give
comrades.
up?
There's a list of them. They're in the court doc. I can pull it out right now. I can pull it out right now.
Yeah, please.
There was
Please do it.
Ali Alexander.
Let's do it slowly. Hold on. Let's do it slowly.
No.
I'm trying to answer your question.
Yeah, Ali Alexander.
Ali Alexander has never been charged with any crimes.
Okay. Amy Creamer,
Never been
Kylie
charged
Creamer,
with any crimes.
Cindy Chaffin,
Never been charged with any crimes.
Simone Gold.
Was charged before I was arrested, weeks before I was arrested.
Okay,
And she's
but
one of my closest friends.
It says they were that your like testimony was used in the court proceedings with them.
No, it doesn't say that.
Okay.
Nothing I told the FBI has ever been used.
Elijah Schaefer.
Never. Wasn't charged.
Christopher Drew.
Not charged.
Michael Caudry.
Can I just save your time? Nobody that I was asked about has ever been charged with any crimes except for Simone Gold, who was charged before I was arrested.
That's not what this is saying, but I will take your word for it.
What is it? What is it saying?
It's a.
I don't deny that I was
Court
asked
document.
questions about people. None of those people have ever been charged with
It
crimes.
says, I mean, in its conclusion, it says that Mr. Straka has turned a page by providing information concerning criminal activity on January 6th on 3 separate occasions.
Wait, what are you reading?
I'm reading a court document. I'm reading. What's is there a title?
Criminal activity?
It's a motion for permission to seal. It's the conclusion of the motion for permission to seal.
But what? I guess I haven't seen that document. That doesn't make sense to me.
But it's from
because-
your court case.
No, I understand, but that doesn't make sense to me because no one I was asked about was charged with crimes. So how could I report criminal activity about people who weren't charged with crimes? Do you think it's just out of the kindness of the government's heart they decided
just
not to
thinking.
charge the people? that I
I'm presuming that the
reported?
lawyers wrote what happened in this art, and there are others. I found this in an article which is talking about how you got a reduced
I'm sure
sentence.
you did, Daily
because-
Beast or Mother Jones.
I don't remember where I got it from. I usually try to use a variety of sources, you know. But
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
yeah, but it just I don't know why people should trust you when you.
Well, right,
say
and
what
perfect.
you let
That's
people.
absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason why they did this. So first of all, every January 6th defendant who takes a plea deal, one of the requirements of getting a plea deal is that you have to interview with the FBI.
Okay.
So far, about 1,500 plus people have been charged for January 6th. I'd say about 95% of them have taken plea deals, which means every January 6th defendant who took a plea deal did exactly the same thing I did, which was sit down and answer the government's questions. Now, in my case, they had a list of names of people that they were asking me questions about. They weren't really asking about January 6th. They were really asking about my personal relationships with these people. Some of them I don't know. Some of them I'd never heard of. And some of them I do know and I have heard of, and I've had a working relationship with them before. I wasn't able to provide any information on anybody that resulted in any criminal charges because I don't have any information that anybody I know committed a crime. Nonetheless, I was cooperative with the FBI and the DOJ because that was part of the requirement of me having my felonies dropped and getting a plea deal. What happened was that after I served my sentence, I think I was the first J6er who began doing media interviews, telling the truth about what the government's doing, how they're abusing people. And also we started doing walkaway events again and we began to recover. And when those things started happening, the left-wing media created, the first thing that happened was that the DC courts accidentally unsealed my sealed documents and sent them in a bulk email to NBC, Huffington Post, and New York Times, etc. Without them ever asking me a single question, they published that list of names and said that I had turned those people into the FBI to get a plea deal. I was asked about those people by the FBI, but you really can't have it both ways, because I kind of get what you're trying to do here, and you're trying to like present me as this like untrustworthy person, and that's the reason why they did it, because they wanted to try to present me to the public as an untrustworthy person.
Okay.
But I don't think you can call someone an informant if no one that they talked about is ever charged with a crime.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're all informants all the time, every day, every time we talk about anything.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to clear that up.
Can you inform on me for something? Just make it up. Like I feel so left out.
Well, you commit fashion crimes every day.
Hi, I also want to thank you for being here today, and thank my brother for bringing me here today. As a lesbian woman who grew up in California, I'm pretty disappointed with the movement of trans against children, and I say against because it is. Growing up with 7 siblings, me being one of the youngest, and having some traumatic things happen to me as a child, I, at the age of 6, wanted to be called my brother's name John and be a boy. And today I probably wouldn't have breasts, and I probably wouldn't be able to talk a good pitch, and I probably wouldn't be able to get my period. Today I saw a New York Times article that came out that exposed a study being done about puberty blockers, that they are not reversible, the consequences.
Gee.
So everything that, as tinfoil hat people have been saying, is now, of course, coming out to light, as it always does. I just wanted to know what your touch on that was, what your thoughts were on that article, and
Well,
your feelings.
every other developed nation has put a pause on puberty blockers. The U.S. somehow is like the last to get to the game. I mean, it's not even tinfoil hat at this point. They're
Right.
not reversible. Certain puberty blockers have been used to chemically castrate criminals. There's been articles before this trans craze ever happened, the social contagion, about the effects of puberty blockers.
Right.
And there's this group in West Hollywood, I think it's called the Trevor Project, and they are funded by a pharmaceutical company that makes puberty blockers. So it's all, I mean, it's awful what we're doing. And if you go on puberty blockers, I'm sure a lot of people in this room know this, and then you do decide that you want to go on cross-sex hormones, and you want to go through with the process of transitioning, which is biologically and physically impossible anyways, you are guaranteed to be sterile for life, which is not a decision that a child could, I mean, you don't even know what it means to want to have children when you yourself are a child. I mean, we're treating kids as if they're like Gumby, and we can just kind of press pause on puberty, and you can decide which puberty you want to go through, which is totally crazy. And then of course, I'm sure most people, Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, who's actually pretty liberal, is a very good book on this. I'm sure most people realize that actually puberty is the cure for feelings of gender dysphoria, at least 70% of the time, if not more. So if, we should be letting children go through this, because at the end of the day, your life is going to be better if you don't feel like you're trans, and that has very little to do with social rejection, and more so to do that with the fact that you've rejected your biology, and you're now functioning with parts that don't belong to you, hormones that are not native to your body, and very often you're not able to conceive, not able to do these things, not able to have an orgasm sometimes. So to pin this on, oh, we just need to accept trans people more is really, really absurd, because we're basically doing like a horror film, and now it's going to children,
I
which
agree.
has to stop.
Well, yeah, like Chuck Schumer said, we're not populating enough. Well, why aren't we? Vaccines, this transgender movement, the puberty blockers. I was just saying that Chuck Schumer came out and said, we're not populating enough, and that the immigration is going to help with population, and it's just, kind of creating the problem to then give the solution that they've already had for a long time creating this agenda. But I also want to point out that, me growing up in the 80s, I'm 40 now, growing up in the 80s with the movement and everything like that, I do feel like it's been hijacked. I do feel like I've never felt more unsafe as a lesbian. I've never felt more unsafe as a woman in my whole life. Like, it's not even easy for me to say I'm gay anymore. I feel like maybe here in Berkeley, sure, but in my own family, growing up as a Catholic, they've loved me, they've accepted me, and I know that's not everybody's story. But if this were happening, if that were me today, I might be ripped away from my parents. I wouldn't have any inclusivity with my family that does love me. So I just wanted to bring that light in this conversation. So thank you.
No, we're the two of us are always saying that we're 100% the people who would have been targeted with this when we were growing up if it were happening like it is today. I mean, when I was a teenager, I just wanted to be David Bowie. If this were now, like, I'd be lucky to get out of middle school with my balls intact. It's true.
I mean, it reinforces gender stereotypes, which is what
100%.
the left claims to be against. It reinforces the idea that there's one way to be female and a woman and one way to be a man and male. And if you don't abide by those things, well then clearly you were born in the wrong body, which is already an absurd
Or
notion because
appropriation.
what's the right body?
Like
Right.
appropriation, you're appropriating women. You're appropriating what a man thinks a woman is, which then just brings in the whole.
You can't know what it's like to
It's
feel like a
insane.
woman if you've never been a woman.
Yeah,
How
so
do you know?
it's literally such a mind, so I also kind of want to bring in like the mind control, it's like modern day mind control where there's so many ideas being thrown around that they contradict each other that we actually have like no idea how to feel secure in how we think. So like me thinking something and saying something out loud may seem brave, but to believe it myself is harder than convincing people in a room.
That's what I think is the danger of the permissiveness of this new like radical trans and this like hair trigger sort of like reaction to believing that kids may or may not be trans. Like I have a theory on this, I'll share with you, I don't know. But I sort of believe that if you're a kid, the way you don't yet have the life experience or the cognitive maturity to understand sexual emotions because you haven't hit puberty yet and you don't know what that is.
Right.
But I will say that I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but like I was somebody who knew I was gay when I was really
Me
really
too.
young.
No, me too.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but like I can remember being in kindergarten, first grade, and having crushes on like men, you know,
Yes,
and
same.
boys and stuff. Now, because my little tiny young brain didn't understand sexual emotions yet, I internalized that as thinking that if you like men, it's because you're a woman. And I remember being like a kindergarten, first grade, and being like, I wish I was a girl. I wish I was a girl, because to me, girls get to be with boys.
Right.
I didn't understand, you know. But then as I got older, I came to realize, like, for some of us, you could be a boy and you can be with a boy. We call that gay. That's what that is.
Yeah.
But I think that's where, for some, not all, but for a lot of gay kids, this confusion comes because the closest thing their little brains are able to relate to is being the opposite gender, because by being the opposite gender, these feelings that you might have for people, you know, even just like a little 7 or 8 year old
Or the
crush,
fear, right? Like,
or that.
like something that happened to me when I'm younger, maybe I don't want to be attracted by men. I don't want to be attracted to men.
Yeah.
I want to not be anything associated with that. Dealing with my own problems in therapy and not having gender had any conversation in that. I am confident in being a lesbian, that's fine. But as a child, absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not. And it was a lot of fear-based, you know?
But I just, you know, these days, I think that's a problem because the culture is so permissive now
Right.
that if you did happen to have a child who was destined to be gay at some point, they were 7 or 8 years old, and the best way they're able to articulate what they're experiencing this by saying, like, I think I'm a girl, or I think I'm a boy, because that's the best way they can understand that. There is this sort of like knee-jerk reaction now to be like, oh my God, I have a trans child. You know,
Absolutely.
let's put him in a dress and let's, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah. Anyway, we should wrap up. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
In 2020, Donald Trump said the election was stolen by Joe Biden, and now that Joe Biden's president, I guess my question is, how does Donald Trump have any chance of winning this year?
Way to bum us all out at the end. I don't know, I've been asking that for like 3 years.
I do think
And
that
now I don't wanna think about it.
I do think that the election, I think that the things that led to the inauguration of Joe Biden, I think that some of those things are going to be more difficult to pull off this time around. We were in very unusual circumstances in 2020. It was like, oh my God, because of COVID, anything goes. Like, you know, drop it off in a drop box, drop off 100 ballots in a drop box, we don't care. We're not totally existing in the same system. I have not a lot of amazing things to say about the Republican Party, but I do believe that some measures have been put into place that they're able to start filing lawsuits immediately if things start looking weird on or after, shortly after November 5th. We didn't have those things in place last time. I mean, the left loves to say, like, you guys lost every court case. We really didn't. I mean, a significant number of them, the filings came in too late, they missed the deadlines, or there was like a lack of standing issue. So I think that we have some mechanisms in place, and it's doing really well.
And we're voting early, which
yeah.
I don't think that we've now, I mean, because a lot of us as Republicans do want single day voting, we want paper ballots, but right now those aren't the rules, and we have to use the rules to our advantage. I don't know if we did that in 2020 as well as we could have, and the other side is doing it. And so when stuff happens on election day, you have a personal emergency, or the machines break down randomly, who is most impacted? Republicans, because they waited till the day of. And also when you vote early, the campaign can check you off. You know, they don't have to keep sending resources to you that could be used towards a less likely voter. So I think we've gotten the gist to vote early, and right now the numbers are really well for Republicans voting early, getting a ballot early. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna win just fine.
I like to hear about
I think we
that.
have cause for optimism. Those of us who support Donald Trump, I think we have cause for optimism. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for coming.